Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again with another video today. Today I'm going to start this strange, fun experiment that I wanted to try to merge my love of the epic fantasy booktube community, also with my love for the reality competition game show Survivor. So I basically took 16 of my favorite booktubers and I'll tag them and link to their channels down below down below in the description, and I plugged all 16 of these individuals or their channels, their channel personas, what have you, into a random number generator kind of simulation of a a season of Survivor. Yeah, and I'm going to go through this in probably 3 different episodes with 16 players to whittle it all down to the one sole survivor, the one winner. That's 15 rounds of gameplay or so, and so I figured each of these videos would go through about 5 rounds of the game, and so that means, unfortunately, by the end of this video, 5 of these 16 channels, 5 of these 16 people will be voted off the island. Yeah, and I should also say, before we get too far into it, that this is mostly based on the channels, the content that they make. I hope no one's placement, I hope nobody takes any of their placements too personal or too personally. Again, this was all determined by a random number generator, and then what I've kind of done on the back end is I've gone back and tried to figure out a rational kind of reason for why the different people they were on a team with might have voted the way that they voted. Again, of course, all determined in that same random generator or simulation kind of thing. So, without any further ado, if you haven't already, it would mean a lot if you could like and subscribe. Also, if somehow you found my channel and you haven't been to any of these channels, or some of the channels I'm going to talk about, some of these excellent booktubers, definitely please check them out. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into this. Alright, so who are all of the individuals that I've included in this? And again, I hope if you're one of these people watching this video, I hope you don't mind what I've kind of done with your name, making you part of this mock game. But these channels are all, I'll actually say what tribes they're on, just to kind of get us going here. So I divided it, the Dragons tribe and the Unicorns tribe, 8 people per tribe. On the Dragons tribe, we have Alex from Tall Guy Reads, Scott the Bald Booktuber, AP or A Critical Dragon, Murphy Napier, Alan from the Library of Alexandria, Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, Philip Chase from his Best of Fantasy channel, and Joanna. And then on the Unicorns tribe, we have Mike's book reviews, we have Daniel Green, we have BookBorn, we have Jake Bishop, we have The Library Ladder, Ruth Ann Bad, Iskar Jarek, and Raph Blue Text. So yeah, those are your different tribes, and I'll throw up an image on the screen of who's on what tribe, and I'll leave that up there just for a second if you want to kind of look at it and see which channels you're familiar with or not. Alright, so before we get into what happens in the opening round of the game, I understand a lot, like, obviously my channel is much more about epic fantasy and books, and not so much about Survivor, so if you're watching this, you might not know the game super well, so I wanted to give just a little bit of a rundown of how a typical season, maybe a slightly older season, would have worked, because now we're almost on season 45 and the game works just a little bit differently, especially towards the end game, than it used to. But I kind of did everything the way that earlier seasons of the show would have operated. So basically, you have your 2 tribes. They compete, or every round they compete in an immunity challenge. The tribe that loses the immunity challenge has to go to tribal council, where they vote off one of their members. And then at some point earlier in the game, usually pretty early in the game, after a few rounds of gameplay, the tribes might mix up who's left. And so you have this tribe swap phase where everyone's, if they formed alliance on their initial tribes, now they might be separate or separated. Now they might be on a new tribe with like a majority or minority advantage or disadvantage, depending on, however the tribe swap shook out. That lasts for a few more rounds, and then typically around 10 or so, everyone left in the game, all 10 players, or 9, 10, 11 players left in the game, they're all brought together on the merged tribe, and from that point on, they still do the immunity challenges, but these are individual challenges now, and only one person wins immunity, everyone else is vulnerable, and everybody goes to tribal council to vote each other out. Also, once that merge phase starts, after one or two rounds, then the jury starts. So everyone voted out. The last 7 or so people voted out of the game. They wind up on the jury, and the jury votes for which of the 2 or 3 finalists they think should win the game. So again, really kind of brief breakdown. In short, tribes competing, whatever tribe's losing has to keep voting people out, and then it's individuals competing, voting each other out, whittling it down to one person left. Okay, so let's go through the first 5 rounds of gameplay. Alright, so the first round, or like what might be like the first episode of a season, the Unicorns tribe easily wins the first immunity challenge, sending the Dragons tribe to the first ever tribal council. And I'll go through with each of these rounds kind of what happens back at the Unicorns camp and what happens back at the Dragons camp. Again, these are all kind of my creative efforts to go back after the fact and justify why the votes and why the strategy of the whole game broke down the way that it did. But yeah, so I'll cover what happens with the tribe that doesn't have to vote someone off each round, and then I'll cover all the strategy and things that are happening with the tribe that does have to vote someone off and how the votes go, or who votes for whom. So the Unicorns won. Things that are happening back at their camp are kind of in this first early phase of the game. We have Jake Bishop and the Library Ladder. They form one of the earliest and probably one of the strongest alliances of this entire game. The works of Guy Gavriel Kay. This is a really important kind of bonding factor for these two guys. Again, that's Jake Bishop and the Library Ladder. And they both made a number of excellent videos about Guy Gavriel Kay, also about a ton of other series. But those are two, when I think about reviews of that one author, I immediately, they come to mind. And I think it would kind of make sense for them to form a natural alliance really early on over their shared love of Kay's work. So that's something that happens. Then Mike and Daniel Green, they discuss how nervous they are that they might be viewed a little bit as threats with their kind of higher subscriber counts. They're easily 2 of the larger booktuber kind of channels that we have playing this game. So while they don't necessarily think that should be like a great reason for them to work together, they want to each, establish real, genuine relationships and alliances. They do acknowledge their relative threat levels and want to help each other kind of watch each other's back, at least. Again, not a super strong alliance per se, but more just, they know how they'll be viewed. Just some good self-awareness there. Then everyone is wary of Ruth Ann Bad, Iskar Jarek, and Raph Blue Text for having made such great Malazan content, all being, I would say, instrumental in the MalazTube kind of days back in like late 2020 through 2021, back when that was really kind of getting going. So that trio, everyone's a little bit nervous about them and the power they might have in the game, especially considering how many MalazTubers are over on the other Dragons tribe. And then BookBorn right now, she's just kind of laying low. So yeah, that's everything with the Unicorns. With the Dragons, and again, this is the tribe that has to vote someone out. So before the first challenge even, pretty quickly, a majority alliance formed. 6 of these 8 people all kind of teamed up. And this was Critical Dragon, Murphy, Alan, Jimmy, Philip, and Joanna. The six, very strong, felt very, very good about having kind of a final six deal. A final six deal. After the challenge, the majority alliance starts to weaken a little bit now that they're faced with voting someone out. Because it would have just sort of been default, okay, we vote either for Alex, Tall Guy Reads, or Scott, the Bald Booktuber. But not everyone's so sure that that's the direction they want to go. For one, AP is frustrated having to work in an alliance with his nemesis, Philip. So he actually, AP goes to Alex and Scott to see if they can figure something out, the three of them. Meanwhile, the majority decides that they can play it safe and split their 6 votes, 3 on Scott, 3 on Alex, just in case either of them found an immunity idol. They'd still have 3 votes over whatever person Scott and Alex voted for, or whatever 2 votes they had, if one of them did play that idol. So yeah, that's their kind of plan. 3 on Scott, 3 on Alex, just to cover their bases. Little did they know, though, that AP is considering working with Scott and Alex, and so they might not have the 6 votes to split that way. And then Alex and Scott think to themselves that they need more than just AP, so they actually approach Jimmy, making him a bunch of Final 3, maybe Final 4 deals, which is better than Jimmy's current situation that might land him in 6th or 5th place if that 6-person alliance sticks together. So Jimmy, thinking through things rationally, he agrees to join their 4. Jimmy and AP, they meet and they make the decision to flip on their allies and join Scott and Alex. These 4, AP, Jimmy, Scott, Alex, they are henceforth known as the 4 Dragons Alliance. And they decide that Joanna might be in the best position as a social butterfly, sort of the good vibes, sort of glue that's holding that other group together, that other group of 4 together. So they're going to target her. And they all keep this really under wraps. So for all this, the 6 know, all those other 4 know, AP and Jimmy are still actually voting with them. So here's how the voting goes. Philip votes for Scott. Murphy votes for Alex. Alan votes for Scott. Joanna votes for Alex, voting along that split vote strategy. But then Scott votes for Joanna, Alex votes for Joanna, AP votes for Joanna, and Jimmy votes for Joanna. And sadly, Joanna is voted out first and comes in 16th place. Now, the second round. And again, the unicorns, they wipe the floor in the second immunity challenge. Poor dragons keep losing. And they're sent back to tribal council. So things happening at the unicorns camp this time. Those kind of vague alliances we covered, the God Gabriel K alliance, the Mike and Daniel, and then the Malaz 2 kind of stuff. Those are just kind of the same as before, pretty consistent. But something interesting that happens here is that Mike finds a hidden immunity idol. He decides to keep it secret. Brief explanation of what this is. At any tribal council, if you have a hidden immunity idol, after everyone's cast their votes, but before the votes are read, you can kind of gamble and you kind of see if your instincts are right and play the hidden immunity idol for yourself or someone else to protect them from whatever happens when the votes are read. Mike found one of these. He's going to keep it secret, especially because the unicorns aren't going to tribal council this time. So, the dragons developments and the voting breakdown this time. Everyone's upset to have to go back to tribal council, and especially the new minority group of Philip, Alan, and Murphy. They feel totally betrayed by Jimmy and AP. Jimmy, AP, Scott, and Alex, the 4 dragons, they are very comfortable in the new majority, and they decide that Alan is going to be their target because he's on a warpath about how badly Jimmy betrayed him. So the voting, or the way the votes go this time, Philip votes for Jimmy, Alan votes for Jimmy, Murphy votes for Jimmy, Jimmy votes for Alan, AP votes for Alan, Scott votes for Alan, and Tall Guy Reads, Alex votes for Alan. Alan is voted out second and comes in 15th place. All right, next, the third round. So this time, just to throw in a little bit of flavor. First, we get a reward challenge, and the Dragons tribe actually wins this reward. And the reward, of course, they each get one special edition book of their choosing. Wouldn't that be nice? But then in the immunity challenge of round 3, there's another surprise kind of come from behind victory for the Dragons, probably helped by the good morale boost that they got from winning that reward earlier. So we'll do Dragons developments first this time. All that you really need to know is happening is that Murphy and Philip, they are working hard to try and convince Scott and Alex to come work with them, trying to argue things like, clearly Jimmy and AP can't be trusted, they'll turn on anyone. That's what Murphy and Philip are trying to pitch to Scott and Alex. We'll have to wait and see how effective this is, or if it works out. So the Unicorns developments and how they vote, kind of the first time they have to go to Tribal Council. So Ruth Ann Bad, Iskar Jirak, and Raph, they make this solid 3-person alliance official. They're trying to figure out if they should work with BookBorn and make a tight 4-person alliance. But they're getting some resistance from her, not exactly sure where she stands or what other groups she wants to work with. BookBorn is playing a cautious game, not wanting to overcommit or make promises that she then later has to go back on. So Ruth Ann, Iskar, and Raph, they can't get a clear yes or no from her. But they are targeting Daniel Green as the biggest name in the game, and probably, or as the biggest name on their tribe, and probably in the entire game. Meanwhile, Daniel, Green, and Mike are more solidly aligned by this point, though Mike still isn't revealing that he has a hidden immunity idol. And they are wary of the hardcore Malazan fans, but they kind of think, what can their 2 do against what's looking like a 3 or maybe even a 4-person alliance, depending on what BookBorn does. And then Library Ladder and Jake, they find themselves in kind of this swing votes position. They're concerned about both the growing number of the Malazan alliance, but also the popular support for Daniel and Mike, and just kind of the power that their kind of channels have behind them. And so Library Ladder and Jake, they see BookBorn's advice, they seek BookBorn's advice on which way she thinks the vote should go. And BookBorn suggests that the Malazan Alliance might only pick up more and more members once the merge hits, because of all the big Malaz tubers over on the Dragons tribe, whereas Daniel and Mike, the further they get in the game, probably the bigger and bigger their threat level is going to grow. So she's not sure they'll really pick up much steam or too many extra numbers. So with that kind of thought process, and with her kind of in the driver's seat for this vote, the GGK duo plus BookBorn join with Mike and Daniel to take out one of the Malaz tube guys. Ruth Ann Bad is selected as the target for how dangerously crafty his debating and argumentation skills are. So the voting. Mike chooses not to play his idol. But Iskar Jirak votes for Mike, Ruth Ann Bad votes for Mike, Raph votes for Mike, BookBorn votes for Ruth Ann Bad, Jake votes for Ruth Ann, Library Ladder votes for Ruth Ann, Mike votes for Ruth Ann, and Daniel votes for Ruth Ann. Ruth Ann Bad is voted out 3rd and comes in 14th place. Alright, 4th round. The Dragons win their 2nd reward challenge. This time the reward is that they all automatically get 10,000 more new subscribers. Yay! Sorry, again, this is a simulation. I can't actually make that the case. Unfortunately, the Dragons can't keep up their recent winning streak, and the Unicorns win another immunity challenge, sending the Dragons back to their 3rd tribal council. So what happens with the Unicorns? Not much, really. There's actually not a ton of fallout from the first tribal where Ruth Ann Bad was voted out, because those kind of duos and trios and whatnot of this tribe's alliances aren't as solid and don't feel quite as betrayed as what's happening with the groups over on the Dragons tribe. Dragons developments and voting breakdown. Alex finds a hidden immunity idol, and he's happy to hold on to this one for later, not feeling in particular danger this round. Still, the foursome of Alex, Scott, AP, and Jimmy, they are determined to control the vote. Murphy and Philip try to find cracks in the alliance, but sadly to no avail. So the voting goes like so. Oh, and Alex doesn't play his idol. Murphy votes for AP, Philip votes for AP, AP votes for Philip, Jimmy votes for Philip, Alex votes for Philip, Scott votes for Philip, and Philip is voted out 4th and 13th place. Alright, so it's 4 people out of the game so far. Now, when they show up to their next reward challenge, they're hit with a twist. The tribes are going to swap up. Because we have 12 people left in the game, 6 people on each tribe now. So when they get randomly draw their new buffs or whatever out of a bag, and they get assigned to new tribes, the new Dragons tribe consists of Jimmy and Scott, who still stay there, but then Mike, Daniel Green, Raph Blue Text, and Library Ladder, those 4 all come over to join the 2 of Jimmy and Scott. So that's the new Dragons tribe. The new Unicorns tribe, BookBorn, Iskar Jarek, and Jake Bishop, they all stay with the Unicorns, but the Dragons that join them are Tall Guy Reeds, AP, and Murphy. Yeah. So a few important things to note about kind of this tense mix-up of the tribes and what this means for our existing alliances. First of all, our main powerhouse alliance of the 4 dragons, AP, Alex, Jimmy, and Scott, totally divided, 2 on each tribe, so we'll have to see if they'll be able to make it through this kind of rough patch. This time apart. Second, the dragons are not in a clear majority on either tribe, with only 2 old members on the new dragons tribe, and an even 3 swap members, even with the 3 unicorns on the unicorns tribe. The other way around, the unicorns now have a majority of 4 on the new dragons tribe, and they are even with the dragons numbers as far as 3 of them that remained on their own tribe. Another thing to point out here, Iskar and Raph were working together, at least for 1 vote, and now they've been divided. Also, Jake and the Library Ladder, they've been trying to subtly work together, but now they're divided. Also, the kind of bigger channels duo of Mike and Daniel, they were actually both swapped to the dragons, to the same tribe, so they get to stick together. The only 2 tribe members that Murphy is with are 2 that were planning to vote her out next anyway, being Alex and AP, and then Mike and Alex both still have their hidden immunity idols. So we'll do 1 more round this kind of episode, and then I'll come back and do rounds 6 through 10 in the following video. So, in this 5th round, the new Dragons tribe wins the first immunity challenge in this new phase of the game, sending the new Unicorns tribe to the next tribal council. Again, the new Unicorns are BookBorn, Iskar Jarek, Jake Bishop, Alex Tall Guy Reeds, AP, and Murphy. So, even though the new Unicorns go to tribal, let's still take a moment to see what's happening at the new Dragons camp. So Library Ladder feels a little bit unsteady in this new tribe configuration because Mike and Daniel think he's definitely working with them because of how the Ruth Ann bad vote went down. But Library Ladder's still not sure how far he wants to go with either of them, still considering them both pretty big threats. So he actually begins talks with Jimmy and Scott to get a sense of what things might be like if they all make the merge together, what options there could be for a sort of cross-tribal alliances. Meanwhile, Mike tells Daniel about his immunity idol, and with that knowledge and having the majority here, they're both very confident with the idol. They're very confident in their majority over the former Dragon players, Scott and Jimmy. But what's going on with the new Unicorns and them going to this tribal council? So this is a bit of a more complicated strategy round. So I'll do my best to kind of get through this, or to convey exactly what happens properly. So the Unicorns decide to stick together, and they are hoping to flip one of the dragons. Again, these unicorns are BookBorn, Iskar Jarek, Jake Bishop, Alex Tall Guy Reads, AP, and Murphy. So, the unicorns decide to stick together, and those unicorns are BookBorn, Iskar Jarek, and Jake Bishop. Right. Through a combination of Alex telling AP and Murphy about his idol, and Murphy having previously put in a decent amount of work, to get into the good graces of the 4 dragons, and she's continuing to do so. These 3 former dragons, they decide that they want to stick together. So now you have 3 former unicorns, 3 former dragons, all kind of pretty determined, pretty sure that they want to work together. They all want to work together. And even if it's a 3-3 tied vote, they don't have to risk going to rocks if they can all figure out who the former unicorns are voting for, so that Alex can play his idol to save that person. So they have 2 main ideas. Step 1, Murphy goes to them goes to the unicorns, admitting that she's on the outs with the dragons and she wants to jump ship, but really she's just trying to see if they wanted to vote for Alex or AP. Step 2, AP approaches Iskar over their love for Malazan, and he establishes a connection there, and he starts to try and see if they want to go for Alex or Murphy. The unicorns think they have both AP and Murphy vying to be a new kind of 4th member to their 3, and they decide to work with AP instead of Murphy. BookBorn is the main driving force behind this decision. They tell AP that Murphy is the clear target because she's actually playing hard, whereas Alex has been laying low. That's intentional. He's laying low, not approaching them. Doesn't want to, give too much away about his idol or anything like that. But because of that, the unicorns don't think he's as threatening as Murphy is. So AP reports back to Murphy and Alex that the 3 unicorns think he's voting with them and that their target is Murphy. So this is how the voting breaks down. Votes are cast, and at the last minute, before the votes are read, Alex stands up, says something cool about dragons sticking together, and he plays his idol for Murphy. So BookBorn votes for Murphy, doesn't count. Iskar votes for Murphy, doesn't count. Jake votes for Murphy, doesn't count. AP votes for BookBorn. Alex votes for BookBorn. Murphy votes for BookBorn. And sadly, BookBorn is voted out 5th in 12th place. All right, so that was the first kind of 5 rounds of the simulation game. I hope I've done the kind of different channel names and, channel characters sort of is how I'm viewing them for a game like this. All wonderful people, the ones I've met, the ones I haven't, I'm sure are wonderful as well. But this is kind of how my kind of mind went about justifying how the random, boot order generator determine things. So I hope you've enjoyed this, first episode of this Survivor Book 2 kind of series that I'm doing, this crossover. And please stay tuned for the next time when somewhere in one of those next rounds we'll get to the merge and we'll get to the first person or 2 that join the jury, and there's a lot of exciting gameplay to happen. Who's going to make it to the merge? Will Old Alliance's team back up? Who knows? Also, please, if anyone that I've included here doesn't like the way that I've described how they're playing this game, don't hesitate to message me or to say, hey, please, I'm not too comfortable with that. I have no problem with, going back and re-editing things. I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of all of you and all of your channels. But again, this really is just for fun. Again, hope everybody enjoyed this, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.